Hello students, welcome back to the lecture series of Environmental Studies Semester 1. Uh, we have started in the last lecture the first module of Environmental Studies of Semester 1, Environment and Ecosystem. This is the overview of the syllabus of first module. Before we actually start the lecture, we need to go through the module objective defined by the university. By the end of this unit, we will be able to understand the concept, definition, nature, scope, and importance of environment and ecosystem. To understand the relationship between man and environment, and we will also be able to understand the importance of environmental studies. In the last lecture, we have discussed various components of natural or physical environment, wherein we have discussed the biotic components of natural environment and abiotic components of natural environment in the last lecture, and we have also discussed the economic as well as ecological importance of each of these components in detail with examples. This lecture aimed at discussing the conceptual background of ecosystem, the concept of ecology, ecosphere, and ecosystem, then the characteristics of ecosystem, and we are also planning to discuss today various components of ecosystem, including abiotic components and biotic components. So let us start. Before we actually start with the characteristics and components of ecosystem, we need to understand the concept of ecosphere, ecology, and ecosystem. So let us first of all try to understand the conceptual background of ecosphere, ecology, and ecosystem. The ecosphere is the part of biosphere, or rather it's a biosphere on the planet Earth, wherein all living organisms or living creatures on this planet interact with their surrounding environment, and therefore it is called as ecosphere. So ecosphere includes the biosphere of the planet Earth or any other planet for that instance, where living organisms interact with their surrounding environment continuously, which is called as ecosphere. So in short, ecosphere can be considered as biosphere, and we can also consider the planet Earth as the ecosphere, where several living organisms interact with their surrounding physical environment continuously. E. Haeckel in the year 1869 has introduced the concept of ecosphere. Now, therefore, as I told you, that the planet Earth can also be considered as the ecosphere because it involves the interaction between the abiotic components and biotic components. Ecology is defined as the science that studies the interaction among ecosphere is called ecology. So ecology is the science that studies interaction of organisms with their physical environment, and the scientific study of the same is called as ecology. So ecology is a science that studies the interaction between biotic and abiotic components of the ecosphere. Now, this slide will help us understand the interaction between the eco or within the ecosphere. If we talk about the ecosphere, sunlight is the major source of energy on this planet, and the sunlight is used by plants or producers to produce their own food, and the energy is transferred into the tissues of plants, and some amount of energy is released into the atmosphere in form of heat. Now, the energy that is captured by the plants enters into the ecosystem, and then it is through food chain and food web, it is consumed by consumers, and then the dead bodies of plants and animals are decomposed by the uh, microorganisms, and some heat is also released into the atmosphere in form of heat at every stage of energy transfer. And some inorganic nutrients are also used by producers from soil, and this is the cyclic nature of energy flow in the ecosphere, which go on continuing. So in this way, the organisms, may it be producers, consumers, decomposers, interact with their physical environment or physical surrounding continuously. Now let us try to understand the concept of ecosystem. The term ecosystem was first developed by a famous ecologist called A.G. Tansley in the year 1985. And he defines the ecosystem as a natural unit consisting of animals and microorganisms, plants, animals, and microorganisms, and the area functioning together with non-living physical factors on the environment is called ecosystem. So, ecosystem is the smallest unit of the ecosphere wherein different living beings like plants, animals, and microorganisms functions together with their non-living or physical environment, and that unit is called as, that spatial unit or geographical unit is called as ecosystem. So ecosystem is a basic functional unit of the natural environment. Why it is functional unit? Because there are continuous interaction between abiotic and biotic elements of the ecosphere or ecosystem, and therefore it is a functional unit. So what kind of function? As I told you in the earlier slide, that sunlight is the source of energy, and then the sunlight which is absorbed by plants, then it enters in the entire ecosystem, and where the energy flow from one organism to the other organism through food chain and food web, and even in case of biomass, the biomass that is being transferred from one organism to the other. And therefore, when the energy transfer is concerned in the ecosystem, that leads to formation of several processes, occurrence of several processes and systems, and that is the reason why ecosystem is considered as the functional unit of the natural environment. Now let us try to understand different characteristics of the ecosystem. The first characteristics of ecosystem is it includes living organism and non-living components in a given area. So ecosystem not only includes the organisms but also their physical surrounding. Ecosystem is also considered as a continuous interacting system wherein the living organism interact with its abiotic surrounding. It is a functional unit, like we have discussed, that several kinds of processes and functions that go on continuing in the ecosystem between organisms and the physical surrounding. Ecosystem is also considered as an open system because there is a continuous input of energy from sunlight and there is a continuous output of matter through energy flow in the ecosystem. So it's an open system wherein there is an input through through sunlight, and there is a output in form of matter, and the energy continuously flow in the ecosystem. The size of ecosystem vary from place to place, so we can have different sizes of ecosystems or different ecosystems of having various size. Like say for example, we have large forest area as an ecosystem, or we can also have a small pond as a unique ecosystem. An ecosystem is defined as a structured natural system. So it is a well-defined structured natural system wherein the interaction between the organisms and the physical surrounding is defined. Like for example, plants produce their food on their own through the process of photosynthesis. Plants will be eaten by plant eating animals, or the animals which are feeded from plants. So there is a structured kind of form of energy flow in the ecosystem, and therefore it's a well-defined, structured natural system. Now, let us try to understand different components of ecosystem. As the earlier in the earlier slides we have discussed that ecosystem include both abiotic and biotic components. If we talk about abiotic components, which provides the life supporting system for organisms in the ecosystem, are sunlight, of course, soil, temperature, rainfall, which are the climatic parameters, water, and also chemical compounds or chemical elements like carbon, nitrogen, hydrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus, which flows through the ecosystem through biogeochemical cycles. And therefore, these abiotic components play very important role in functioning of the ecosystem, because without the help of abiotic components, animals, plants, and other living creatures on this planet won't be able to, get their food. As far as the biotic components of the natural environment is concerned, it can be classified into three types based on the trophic levels. Trophic levels is the level which is formed by the feeding of a particular organism. So, on the basis of that, we classify it into three. The first one is producers or autotrophs, which are also called as self-feeders, those who produce their own food. Second is heterotrophs or consumers, which do not produce their own food, but they depend upon other organisms for their food, which can further be subdivided into four: herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, detrivores, and saprotrophs. And the third category of biotic component is decomposers, the microscopic organisms which disintegrate dead bodies of animals and plants. Now let us try to understand the abiotic components first. Sunlight is an important source of energy, rather it's a main source of energy for the ecosystem, and sunlight or solar energy helps in functioning the ecosystem, because sunlight is required for plants to produce their food through the process called photosynthesis. Besides sunlight, soil is another important abiotic component, wherein it provides foundation for growth of plants. Different kinds of minerals, different kinds of the water and organic material is also present in the soil, which provides foundation for the growth of plants. And plants can only grow in soil, and the choice of plant, I mean the category of plant or the kind of plants that grow in the soil, depend upon the physical, chemical, and biological characteristics of the soil. The climatic parameters include temperature and rainfall, which also play important role in the ecosystem, because temperature and rainfall are considered to be fundamental in the growth of plants and also sustenance of other living beings in the ecosystem. And therefore, climate cannot be separated from the ecosystem, because various processes that operate in the ecosystem cannot be completed without the incorporation of climatic parameters. And therefore, temperature, rainfall, winds, evaporation, then we have surface runoff, then we have various atmospheric circulations which play significant role in sustenance of ecosystem and also energy flow of ecosystem. Water is another important element, abiotic or inorganic element in the ecosystem. Water is essential for existence of all living beings on this planet, because none of the living organism on this planet will be able to survive without water. In fact, the existence of the entire biosphere depend upon the availability of water, and therefore water is inseparable part of the ecosystem, without which it is not possible. Similarly, the oceans or ocean currents play important role in the ecosystem which developed in water. Particularly, there are two types of ocean currents. One is cold ocean currents, and other is the warm ocean current. Now, the movement of ocean currents across the oceans play important role in the development of fish grounds, and therefore the areas where cold currents are prominent, there the fish grounds are more well developed, and that leads to the growth of aquatic ecosystem more importantly. Besides that, ocean currents also play important role in transportation of nutrients in the water from one region to the another region through the oceans, and therefore they also play important role in the nutrient supply to the aquatic ecosystem or water ecosystem. Chemical elements including oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon, hydrogen, and water play important role in the ecosystem, because most of these chemical compounds, they flow through the ecosystem. They play important in the energy flow of ecosystem through biogeochemical cycles, which we will be discussing in minutes to come. Now, may it be nitrogen, may it be phosphorus, may it be oxygen, may it be carbon or water or hydrogen, they cycles through the various spheres. It may be a lithosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, or atmosphere. It continuously cycles through, and that also play important role in sustaining the ecosystem in one or the other way. Now, these are the abiotic components of the ecosystem. Let us try to understand biotic components of the ecosystem. Biotic components of ecosystem include three types of organisms: producers, consumers, and decomposers. Producers are also called as autotrophs. Auto means self, troph means feeded. So the organisms which are self-feeded are called as producers. Most of the green plants and some photosynthesizing bacteria on this planet, which produce their food through the process of photosynthesis on their own, and production of food or production of food by the plants on their own is the first stage of energy flow in the ecosystem, wherein solar energy or light energy is converted into the energy in form of tissues of plants, and which further is transferred in the ecosystem. So photosynthesis process is very, very important. Here it requires carbon dioxide, water, chlorophyll, and light, which is required for the photosynthesis process. Light, I mean sunlight. And then the output is glucose, oxygen, and also the water vapor, which is released back to the atmosphere through leaves of plants. So 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O, along with the chlorophyll and sunlight, it gives rise to the formation of glucose, that is C6H12O6, plus oxygen that is released back to the atmosphere, and also water vapor that is released back to the atmosphere. So producers or autotrophs are all green plants and photosynthesizing bacteria which produce their own food. They don't depend upon any other organisms for food they require. Consumers or heterotrophs. Hetero means others, trophs means feeded. So heterotrophs means the organisms which are feeded by other organisms. So these are the organisms which depend upon other organisms directly or indirectly for their food, and therefore they are called as heterotrophs or consumers. So these consumers can be classified into number of organisms: primary consumers, secondary consumers, and tertiary consumers. The organisms which directly depend upon plants or producers for their food, they are called as herbivores. Carnivores are the organisms which depend upon the herbivores or animals or flesh of animals, are called as carnivores. And omnivores are the organisms which can eat both producers as well as the primary consumers. and decomposers are the microscopic organisms which decomposes the dead bodies of animals and plants. So herbivores are all grass eating, or the organisms which depend upon the plants to eat. Carnivores eats the flesh of animals. Omnivores eat both vegetation, natural vegetation, and animal or flesh of animal. And detrivores or saprotrophs are the organisms which eat the dead bodies of plants and animals. Decomposers, on the other hand, include all microscopic organisms or microorganisms which disintegrate or decompose the dead bodies of plants and animals, and which convert the complex chemical materials into the simpler substances or simpler nutrients which can further be used for energy cycling in the ecosystem. So these nutrients play important role, they can be used as a manure for growth of plants, and therefore decomposers, although they are not economically important directly, but they play important role in ecological sustenance. So what we have discussed till now, we have discussed the ecology, ecosphere, and ecosystem concepts. We have also discussed that ecosystem is the smallest unit of the ecosphere, and we have discussed components of ecosystem, both abiotic and biotic components of the ecosystem. So we will be discussing the functioning of ecosystem and other elements of ecosystem in the next lecture. Till then, thank you very much, students. Have a nice time.